And so this can be really misunderstood. So I thought we'll spend a little time just talking about it. And just to start, I'd love to see what you understand by mindfulness. By this non-judgmental attitude, or by non-judging. So, if you like to just write in the chat, what is your understanding of it? So it kind of gives us an idea, and we can learn from each other a little bit. What do you think this attitudinal foundation of non-judgment means, and how do you practice it? Holding open to outcome, yes. Neutral observer. Neutral, that's a beautiful way of putting it, Nina. Yes, neutral observer, no thinking. Okay. Open heart, listen with love and presence. Acceptance. Interesting, Laura. Yes, because they're all intertwined one in another. That's right. All the foundations. We practice one. All you have to do is take on one for the rest of your life, and you've practiced all of them. That's kind of how it goes. So pretty interesting. Loving, yes. Curiosity instead of judgment. Yeah, yeah. Bringing a sense of curiosity. Yeah, that could be really helpful in this balancing the non-judgmental attitude as well. Accepting as is even when different. It's moving away from me, from your own acceptance. Yeah, when it's even if it's different from your own point of view. That's right. Allowing people to make their own choices. Yes. We're all one, and if we judge others, we judge ourselves. Ah, Judy, that is so wonderful too. Yeah, thank you. And so a lot of judgment, a lot of the times comes in from our own perceptions of ourselves. And so really tuning into ourselves, what we see in others exists in us as well. So yeah, interesting. Tell me more. Okay. So we'll be talking a little more about this. Thank you so much for that. Approaching situations with beginner's mind and curiosity. That's right. So once we practice this openness, this beginner's mind, already practicing non-judging. Yes. Not bringing expectations once, not wanting. Yes. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that kind of gives us a really good foundation. So thank you for your wisdom and for sharing that. And then we can go on to maybe our practice, and then we'll talk a little more about this, and we'll see where we are with this non-judgment. And so as we do this, as we engage in this formal practice, perhaps we can just in some way tune into the mind and just notice when there's judgment. And so I'm going to walk you right through it, and I'll be guiding the session as usual. So you can do this with your eyes closed, your eyes open, lowering the gaze. And then just right now, just tuning into the breath and maybe taking in a deep breath. This is just to ground us in the moment. So just taking in a deep breath. And on your next deep breath, just exhaling long. So just emptying all that air from the lungs. Allowing the belly to just become completely empty, the body to be empty of the breath. Giving the breath out into the world as a gift, as an act of generosity. So one more time, taking in a deep breath. And long, long exhale. And just becoming aware of where you're positioned in this room. Where is this body sitting? And becoming aware of the surface that's holding you. And in this way, just noticing if the body is fully settled here, or is there any tension, any tightness? Are you allowing the surface to hold you? And so if you notice any tightness, any tension, any resistance to allowing the surface to hold you, perhaps just inviting yourself to just let go of that. And that could be by taking a deep breath or maybe shifting the body in some way that is comfortable for you. And whenever you're ready, just allowing the body to breathe normally. Doesn't need any help from us. Just noticing your respiration, becoming aware of the inhale, the exhale. And then just allowing for the intention to maybe being here and being present with your practice during this time. As you've now become aware of the breath and this body breathing, just noticing the length of the breath, feeling it in the body. Noticing if the breath is short or long. Becoming aware of the quality of the breath. Noticing if it's deep or shallow. And there's not much you have to do. If you're here, you are breathing. So perhaps you can feel the body rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. And just in this way, allowing the breath to guide. allowing your attention to just rest here in this body, breathing, expanding, contracting, rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. And as you become aware of the body breathing here, you might notice also the mind wandering. Whenever you notice this, it's a mindful moment. So really, maybe bringing a smile to your face, noticing that the mind has wandered once again. And then with that same kindness, bringing your attention right back to just noticing the breath. And now shifting your attention to the bottom of your feet and noticing if they're in contact with the ground, noticing the sensations here. Maybe there's a sensation of numbness or coolness or heat, even moisture or tingling. Or maybe there's the absence of sensation here. So just noticing that. Sensing through the toes. the rest of the foot. And now moving up the legs and just noticing if the legs are in contact with the surface holding you. Allowing your attention to rest in these areas where the legs might be in contact with the surface. Noticing the stiffness or softness, warmth or coolness, heaviness, lightness. And now noticing the hips and the pelvis, the glutes and the tailbone. And as you notice the different areas of the body, just becoming aware if there is any judgment about how things should be, the expectation. As you do this practice and you notice maybe the mind wandering, noticing if there is judgment about that. And so moving up to the rest of the body, the upper trunk. Or maybe you can feel your heartbeat, or the back of the chair if you're on a chair pressing against, or if not, then just noticing the lightness of the back being free from being on a surface. And moving up to the shoulders. And as your attention rests here on the shoulders, just noticing if there is any tension or tightness. This is often a place where we hold a lot of tension. And as you notice this, just seeing if perhaps you can let go of the tightness if that feels all right. Really seeing this more of an invitation to let go of the tightness than pushing it away. And now noticing your hands, the palms of the hands. And just sensing through the palms of the hands. Now maybe moving your attention to the arms, starting with the wrist and the lower part of the arm and moving up to the elbows, and the upper part of the arm. And how about the shoulders again? Just checking in, noticing if anything has shifted or changed. Noticing the neck and the throat. And how about checking in with your jaw? Is there tightness here? Is there tension? How about the rest of the face? And maybe you can feel the breath coming in through the nose, the nostrils. And now just checking in with the rest of the head, back of the head, sides of the head, top of the head. And now taking in a deep breath. And on a long exhale, just allowing your attention to flow all over the body, all the way from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes. And then just noticing all sensation here in the body. And as you do this, paying close attention to any judgment that might rise about your practice, about how long you can hold your attention, about the body in general. And as you sit here, perhaps bringing into mind just a judgment that often comes to your mind, judgment about others that might happen, something that you find to just rise up often. What is something that you judge someone else for? Whatever that might be. It could be tardiness, it could be the way people look, it could be character, it could be their emotional state. And you might have a particular person in mind as you think about this, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a general, just noticing it, becoming aware of that judgment. I know we probably have many, many judgments, so just choosing one for now. And then just noticing as you become aware of this judgment, noticing what happens. How do you feel? How is the body? Do you notice any tension, any tightness? Do you notice more thoughts about it? Is there any emotion that follows it? And now just perhaps contemplating how much of that do you know to be true? How certain are you that that's true? Perhaps looking a little more in depth, as if we were putting under a microscope this judgment. And then just noticing, for instance, if it's tardiness, somebody that is always late, we might judge them as careless, doesn't care about much. And so seeing within this judgment if there is any other explanation. And just keeping that openness. It's not about being right or wrong. That's a judgment as well. So just noticing what happens when you open up in this way. And so again, there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever comes up for you, it's perfect. And then whenever you're ready, just taking in a deep breath and exhaling long and coming back to the breath or to the feet, maybe the bottom of your feet or the palms of your hands, and just anchoring here, anchoring your attention in these areas of the body, sensing through them. The poet Rumi says, how does a part of the world leave the world? How does wetness leave water? Don't try to put out fire by throwing on more fire. Don't wash a wound with blood. No matter how fast you run, your shadow keeps up. Sometimes it's in front. Only full overhead sun diminishes your shadow, but that shadow has been serving you. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is a candle. Your boundaries are your quest. He says, I could explain this, but it will break the glass cover of your heart, and there's no fixing that. You must have shadow and light, both. Listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. When from that tree feathers and wings sprout on you, be quieter than a dove. Don't even open your mouth or even a coo. So taking in a deep breath and gently becoming aware of the body. Maybe shifting a little bit. So this exploration of non-judgment, that's on the definition of mindfulness, and that is also on the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness, right? It's interesting, but I was looking it up on the dictionary, and it actually defines judgment as the process of forming an opinion or evaluation by discerning and comparing. And so when we practice mindfulness, this opinion or evaluation is formulated from a place within in truth. Now that's the difference. So mindfulness allows us to see past the judgment, to go more in depth, to become aware of it. Now the mind is going to judge anyway. The mind is always judging. The mind is always formulating opinions and is formulating opinions, and we're trying, it's more than formulating, it's also trying to validate. It's also validating what he thinks. It wants to be right. The mind always wants to be right. So when we see somebody else or we're in a certain predicament, we always think that we're right. So this without judgment, when applied to our formal practice, when we're sitting in the cushion, when we're meditating, it's more deeply rooted in this way of being able to open to our experience and allow it all to come to our awareness. Because once we have this level of understanding without the exclusion of any particular area of our experience, we can use this judgment now. We can see it, we can use it, and we can come up with discernment. And so that's the key. But while we're sitting in the cushion, the definition says paying attention without judgment, because we want to make sure that we embrace the entire experience. And if there is judgment, we're going to resist parts of it. We're going to just not want to go there. And the idea is that we can be with our emotions, we can be with our thoughts, we can be with everything that experience brings. So in the cushion, we're saying that practicing is without judgment, being open to the entire experience, the entire spectrum. So another thing is that when you're meditating, when we're all meditating in this way, we can see the judgment rise up. We can see it as a thought that the mind just produces. And so we can see how narrow sometimes these opinions are and these judgments. And so they're filtered by our own moods, and they're filtered by sometimes prejudice and conceptions and misconceptions. We're seeing life with this filter. And so being aware of the judgment is key, because it's going to happen anyway. The mind is going to judge. So it's not really particularly we doing the judgment. It just judges based on experience. So whatever our experience is going to formulate an opinion, right? For instance, in the example I was given, if I see nothing wrong with somebody being late, but I kind of see it as a really good quality of being lost in time and not caring about time, then there's not going to be that judgment in certain ways, right? Then my opinion is going to be very different about what this person, how this person is showing up. But perhaps will not escalate it to this person doesn't care or anything like that, but it'll just stay there. It'll stay in the moment, seeing that, oh, there's another possibility. And so it's an invitation, really, this non-judgmental attitude. It's an invitation to notice the judgment and to seeing what else comes up with it. And so we're not talking about non-judgment in general of and I think Jon Kabat-Zinn actually says this, I'm not saying to walk in front of a truck, right? I'm not saying let's just kick judgment out of the window. So we're talking more about discernment. When we're able to notice judgment within our practice, we're able to actually explore a little more and see. So we're now proceeding from deep sense of knowledge and deep wisdom, instead by just the filter, the first thing that we see. And we might notice judgment all the time, right? We might notice judgment when we're among each other. We might notice judgment as we go to places. The mind is always judging, but the more aware we become of it, the more we can have discernment in life. And this noticing judgment also contributes to one of the biggest benefits of mindfulness, which is emotional resilience. Because every time we notice in this way, we notice the emotion behind it, and we notice how upset we might get or how we might not get upset. We notice the entire experience in this way, we're able to hold it. And that's what brings this resilience that all scientists always talk about with mindfulness. The being able to be with experience exactly as it is, without really the reactivity. And so when we have this judgment, right, when we're judging the moment as this is not okay, I shouldn't be sad right now, for instance, I should be happy, I have everything, then we're not allowing, and then we're not in experience anymore. It kind of judgment takes us out of the present in a lot of ways. It takes us out and puts a filter in our minds, and we can't see through it. And so this idea of non-judgment goes farther than just, knowing something's safe or not. We actually come in from a more informed place deep within ourselves that is not just filtered by our beliefs, by our past experience, by our childhood or anything else. Actually, we're able to see, And so in the exercise that I just shared with you, right, noticing when you think about somebody, something about somebody that you judge, what is it about it? How do you feel about the judgment, right? We're able to see that we can hold it, and then we can discern, sometimes we find that, some people might not be that safe to be around, right? Some people might not. And in certain circumstances, we can use discernment in that way. But it takes a layer of depth, really, for us to really have that understanding. And so really noticing the judgment first step. And again, there is a judgment of judging. Oh, I judge everything. And so what is an antidote for that is to really understanding that, yes, the mind judges. It will do it anyway. right? We learn that way. That's our guide in some way. But we just want to see and use that discernment in, how much of this is really true and how much of this is really just me being reactive, right? Because judgment can come out of reactivity as well, pushing things away, not wanting something and want it to go away, right? Or I'm wanting more of something, right? This is awesome. This is so beautiful. I want more. And so with mindfulness is really, a way to freedom from all this suffering that it causes to want this or not want that, and the mind always grasping, and judgment is kind of like the thing that takes us to these places. And so that's why it's kind of there's a lot of emphasis in it when we do our practice. And so we can practice our meditation and be open to experience without the judgment, just noticing the judgment. Then we're already practicing discernment, because we can see the judgment rise and we know that it's just a thought. And then if we're in a real situation, we can explore that a little more. We recognize now how our judgment works, what we judge, what we don't. And so when we're in experience and we're in life in general with others, or in whatever it is that we're doing, we are able to know that we're judging because we've been practicing that, and now use discernment. So now really tapping into that informed response instead of a reaction to whatever it is that's happening. So it's really a big part of the practice. And again, I wanted to emphasize this because it can be misconstrued a lot of the times, like, non-judging. So therefore, I'm going to lose all kind of discernment, and I'm going to walk out in front of a truck, or I'm going to perhaps not trust how I feel about a situation because I'm judging it. So it brings us a layer of discernment, a layer of cultivation of wisdom. And it could be very beautiful to notice the judgment and just notice that layer of wisdom that rises. And then seeing, wow, actually this had nothing to do with that person. It has all to do with me, because I always like to be on time, or, and then life just becomes easier. So really, this layer of mindfulness is the awareness, that kind of awareness that allows us to just have an easier, really, life in a lot of ways, that freedom from all that stress that we bring onto ourselves. So if you have any questions about that, you can put them in the chat. I don't have all the answers. I learned here with you. These are just some words that I share. And this, it's interesting because mindfulness is not really something that is in a textbook. It's more of experiential. Everything is experience. And so really, doesn't matter how much we read, or, we're not interested in that. We're interested in our own experience and what is it that we're learning, and how are we really aligned with this path of the attitudinal foundations, and how are we aligned with mindfulness? How is mindfulness holding our life, right? Now, one more thing that I wanted to add is that sometimes we fantasize with this idea of mindfulness, and we think that mindfulness is just niceness and kindness. Now, what happens is that when we really practice mindfulness, this niceness and kindness becomes very genuine, becomes part of who we are, because we understand ourselves better. So we're less reactive, we become kinder, more compassionate. That's just driven from within. But it's not really about having this layer of compassion that I have to be compassionate all the time because I'm a mindful person, but it's cultivated with the practice. And there are layers that start really happening slowly, little by little, until we are actually applying this in life. And so one thing that I, since today is our day of practice, one another thing that I wanted to mention is that we can meditate in the cushion all we want. We can read all the books that we want. But if our life is not changing, then we're not practicing. And you will know if mindfulness is really present when we're interacting with others, when we're out in your life. Not when you're alone, not when you're with your own self, but when you're around others, because this is the triggering. This is what allows us to kind of see like, wow, I was able to hold back. I was able to notice how I was feeling instead of reacting and being kind to myself. And so just a few words, just wanted to thank you for being here and for practicing with me. And I think I'd like to hear from you. So I'll give you some space to maybe just share your experience and what have you learned. Last year, I think we also started with non-judgment, and it's been now a long time for some of us that we've been practicing together in this way with the Attitudinal Foundation. So I'm wondering, in this particular one, what have you learned? So thank you so much for listening and for your kind attention. Thank you. So we'll move into our